I never thought a reunion would be the thing that changed everything. It was supposed to be a simple event, one of those nostalgic moments where old friends gather to laugh about shared memories. I didn't expect anything more than a few awkward handshakes and forced small talk. But I was wrong. I never noticed when she started acting differently. At first, it was subtle. A late night out here and there. A few extra hours at work. I thought nothing of it. After all, our life together had been a long, quiet journey of routines. We were solid, or so I believed. Then the reunion happened, and I began to see the cracks. It was an anniversary reunion for her high school. She was excited, like she hadn't been in ages. I didn't think much about it. She deserved a bit of fun, right? She hadn't seen some of those people in over a decade, and there was a part of me that was glad she was reconnecting with the past. We didn't talk much that evening. She was wrapped up in greeting old faces, while I stood to the side, nursing a drink, feeling more out of place than usual. I didn't mind, not really. I've always been the quiet one. But then, I saw him. I didn't know his name, but I knew the look in his eyes as he watched her. There was something in the way he stood a little too close when they spoke. He had this confidence, this swagger, something I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't help but watch. There was something about the way she laughed a little too brightly at his jokes, how her hand brushed his, lingering just a fraction too long. I thought maybe I was imagining things. After all, people flirt at reunions, don't they? It's nothing more than a fleeting moment, a dance of nostalgia. But when I saw them step away from the crowd, a little too far, a little too unnoticed, the seed of doubt was planted. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. But when she came back, her eyes a little too bright, a little too distant, I knew something had shifted. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick, perfunctory gesture, before disappearing to the bathroom. That's when I saw him again, standing by the door, like he was waiting for something. Now, I wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but a gut feeling was gnawing at me, relentless and unforgiving. Something had changed, something I didn't understand. I was still trying to dismiss it when she returned, her face flushed, like she had just run a marathon. A part of me wanted to ask her where she had been, but I held back. After all, who was I to question her? We were in a good place, weren't we? But as the night wore on, the distance between us grew. When we left, her silence was deafening. That's when I knew. Something had happened, something I wasn't ready for. But the real question was, what had she done? And with whom? The days after the reunion were a blur. She was different. Subtly, but undeniably so. The usual light in her eyes had dimmed, and no matter how I tried to engage with her, she was always just out of reach. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. She'd been around so many people, so much energy, after all. But as the days passed, the disconnect only grew. She would come home late, sometimes claiming to be working, other times saying she'd gone out with the girls. I didn't say anything. What did I know about how people needed space? I'd heard the whispers over the years, about relationships needing room to breathe, about avoiding the stifling nature of constant closeness. But still, something felt off. It was during one of these late nights that I found myself sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched meal she'd left behind. She always made it a point to sit with me, but tonight, I was just alone. I couldn't stop thinking about that look she shared with him at the reunion, that spark in her eyes when he made a joke that was a little too personal. It gnawed at me. I grabbed my phone and began scrolling through the pictures from the reunion. She had posted a few pictures of her with old friends, some group shots, and then a few solo shots that, in hindsight, seemed a little too curated. There it was again, the guy? He was in the background of one of her photos, leaning in just a little too closely, his hand barely touching her lower back. I zoomed in, my heart pounding in my chest. How had I missed this? Had she posted these for me to see, to let me know? I had to know more. I started scrolling through the comments, trying to piece together some kind of context. Nothing stood out until I saw a name mentioned a couple of times in her old friend's posts. Hey, good to see you again, Greg. It's been way too long. Greg, that was his name. I didn't know much else, but the fact that his name was there, in the comments, felt like a slap in the face. But what could I do? Confront her without evidence, just based on my gut feeling? No, that would be absurd. I needed proof. I needed to know just how deep this thing had gone. So, I did what anyone in my situation would do. I started watching more closely. Every word she said, every glance she gave, every interaction, no matter how small. I kept my distance, pretending like nothing was wrong, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop wondering, what was she hiding? What was she keeping from me? The days turned into a silent game of cat and mouse. She became more secretive, more withdrawn, and I became more obsessed with finding answers. I needed to know. I had to know. Then came the phone call. It was a Wednesday when it happened. I was at work, my mind more focused on the growing doubts than on the files I was supposed to be reviewing. The phone rang, and it was her number flashing across the screen. I hesitated for a moment, my stomach knotting with a familiar unease. Why was she calling me in the middle of the day? We usually texted or talked after work, but today, there was something different about it. I answered on the third ring. "Hey, babe, how's your day going?" She asked, her voice a little too bright, almost forced. "Good. Just the usual. You?" There was a pause on the other end. A beat too long. "I'm just finishing up a project here. I should be home later tonight," she said, her words crisp but not quite matching the energy I expected. I could hear something else in the background, though. It was faint, but there. Laughter. Male laughter. I stopped myself from asking immediately, but my mind was already racing. "I thought you were supposed to be working from home today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh no, that was last week. I've been in the office all day, actually," she replied, her voice tight now, defensive. "I've got a few things to catch up on." I could feel the tension building. I was never the type to push, but today, something felt off. "Are you sure? Because it sounds like you're with someone." "I mean, I'm hearing laughter. It's pretty obvious." I heard her take a sharp breath, a sudden catch in her throat. "What? No, I'm alone. She faltered, then sighed. "Look, I really have to go. I'll talk to you later, okay?" Before I could respond, she hung up. Just like that. A call that had started so innocently ended in confusion and dread. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the emptiness of the line ringing in my head. There was no doubt now. I wasn't imagining it. The laughter was too distinct, too real. Someone else was there. Someone male. And that damn name, Greg, came rushing back to me. I didn't know what to do next. Confront her now? Or wait, bide my time, and see how far this would go? I chose to wait. I had a gut feeling this wasn't the first time. Maybe it wasn't even the second. And if I was going to confront her, I needed to be ready. I needed proof. I needed something concrete to confront her with, something she couldn't deny. The next few hours passed in a blur. I barely got any work done. I couldn't stop thinking about the phone call, about what I'd heard. And then it hit me. She was home that night. I hadn't seen her leave, and I hadn't heard any sign of her coming back from the office. No keys, no bag being dropped, nothing. She'd disappeared into thin air after that phone call, and something told me I was about to find out why. That night, when she came home, the familiar feeling of unease that had settled in my stomach deepened. She was acting normal, but I could tell. She couldn't even look me in the eye. I had a decision to make. Would I confront her now, or wait for more? I decided to play my cards close to my chest. There was no rush. Not yet. The next few days felt like walking on eggshells. I kept the tension between us unspoken, but it was there, thick in the air. She was going through the motions of our daily routine, but I could see it. She was hiding something. Maybe she didn't think I noticed, but every time she reached for her phone, her hand was a little too quick to swipe the screen away when I came into the room. And the way she kept leaving the room to text, like she was hiding something important, made my suspicions grow even more. I was done waiting. I couldn't just let this sit inside me anymore. The next step was obvious. I needed to get access to her phone. The problem was, we had always been one of those couples who shared everything: passwords, phones, apps, social media accounts. So, I had no reason to believe she would keep anything from me. But over the last few months, I noticed subtle changes. There was a password on her phone now, something she hadn't had before. At first, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe she just wanted to keep things secure. But the truth was, I knew something was off. One evening, she left her phone on the counter while she took a shower. Her back turned to me, the door closed. I saw the opportunity I'd been waiting for. My hands shook as I reached for the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The password was a simple one. I'd seen her type it a few times in passing. I unlocked the phone with ease. The feeling that washed over me was a mix of dread and exhilaration. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever I might find, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was blind. I opened her messages first. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but it wasn't what I found. There were messages from Greg. My stomach dropped as I scanned through them. They were innocent enough at first. Casual conversations about work, the usual small talk you'd expect between friends. But as I scrolled further, things took a turn. The messages started to get more personal, more flirtatious. There was a comfort in the way they spoke to each other, an intimacy I hadn't seen in months. And then I saw it. A message from Greg, sent just a few days ago. I can't stop thinking about last night. Can't wait to see you again soon. Beautiful. My breath hitched in my throat. Last night, I scrolled back through the messages, looking for context, looking for a sign that I wasn't just imagining things. And there it was. 2 days before the reunion, Greg had sent her a picture. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to make me feel sick. It was a picture of them together at a bar, her laughing, her hand on his chest, his arm around her waist. I hadn't seen that picture before. It had never been posted anywhere. This was real. This was happening. She was cheating on me, and the man she was with wasn't just some random guy. It was Greg, the guy from the reunion, the one I had seen her laughing with, the one she'd been so drawn to. I didn't know what to do next. I wanted to confront her, throw the phone in her face, and demand answers. But part of me wanted to keep watching, keep gathering information. I needed more than just a few text messages to confront her with. I needed something that would shatter her denial completely. I put the phone back just as the shower turned off. My heart was racing, my mind was spinning. I tried to act normal, tried to pretend that nothing had changed, but I knew deep down that everything had just shifted. The game was on now. She stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, and gave me a smile. It wasn't the same smile I remembered. It was forced, awkward. She kissed me on the cheek and walked past me toward the bedroom. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would wait for the right time. I wasn't going to let her off easy. She had made her choice, and now I would make mine. The days that followed felt like a balancing act. On the outside, nothing had changed. She went to work, I went to mine. We had dinner together, and life proceeded. But beneath it all, there was a tension growing between us. One that neither of us was acknowledging, but it was undeniable. I knew something had shifted. I didn't need to wait any longer. I needed to confront her. It was Friday evening when I decided. The decision had been brewing for days. I had the truth now, but I didn't want to just ask her about it. I needed to hear it from her, to see her face when she knew I knew. She came home late as usual, but I was already waiting in the living room. The TV was on, muted, but my focus was on her. She smiled when she walked in, like everything was normal, but there was a nervous energy about her. The way her eyes darted away when they met mine made my heart race. "Hey, babe. Long day?" she asked, tossing her keys on the counter. I didn't respond right away. I was gathering my thoughts, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but cold. "So, I saw something today," I said. She froze, her smile faltering slightly. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and set it down on the coffee table, facing up. The text messages from Greg were still open, a painful reminder of everything I'd discovered. I didn't need to explain. She would know. "I know," I said simply. "I know what's been going on." Her face paled, and for a second, she looked like she might faint. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but there was a tremor in her voice. "Greg," I said, leaning forward slightly. "The guy from the reunion. The one you've been texting. The one you've been more with." She didn't respond. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I could see the panic rising in her eyes, and I hated how I was making her feel, but I didn't care. This was her doing. I found the messages, the pictures, the late-night texts. "Last night, really?" I paused, my throat tight. "How long have you been seeing him?" She stammered, trying to find her words, but I wasn't having it anymore. "You didn't even bother hiding it. You wanted me to find out. So here we are." "I didn't want to hurt you," she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hurt me?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "It's a little too late for that, don't you think?" She broke down then, tears filling her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. "Not anymore. I never meant for it to happen. We grew apart," she said, trying to explain herself. I shook my head. "Don't give me that. You chose this. You chose him." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stood up, moving toward her. "You didn't mean to? This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. You crossed a line, and now I have to deal with the consequences. We're done. She tried to speak, to say something, but I cut her off. No, don't. I can't just forget this. She reached for me then, her hand trembling. Please, please don't leave me. I stared at her, my heart heavy but resolute. You left me a long time ago. I'm done. You made your choice. I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of everything crashing down. She didn't call after me. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I was done. And no matter how much she tried to convince me otherwise, she wasn't going to undo the damage she'd done. I left the room without looking back. It felt like I was floating, walking through the motions while my mind tried to make sense of everything. It was all happening too fast. I wanted to feel relief, but all I felt was emptiness. The anger was there, simmering beneath the surface, but it wasn't enough to erase the crushing weight of betrayal. She didn't follow me. Not immediately. I had expected a desperate plea, a last-ditch attempt to change my mind. But there was nothing. Just silence. I could hear her sobbing softly from the living room, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. I went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What now? Where did I go from here? It was strange how quickly everything had unraveled. We had been fine, or so I thought. Sure, things weren't perfect, but what marriage is? I had my issues. Work, my knee, the stress of life. But I had never once thought that she would betray me. I never thought she would be the one to step outside of our vows. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling the weight of the decision I'd just made. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, my future, and whether or not I could ever trust her again. I knew, deep down, that I couldn't. It wasn't just the affair. It was the lies, the deceit, the way she'd hidden everything from me, the way she had let it go on for so long, thinking I wouldn't notice. I thought about the phone call from the other day, the one where she sounded so calm, like nothing was wrong, the way she brushed off my suspicion, and then the laughter in the background. His laughter. I couldn't shake the image of her with him. The way she'd leaned in a little too close at the reunion. The way they had looked at each other, like there was something between them that I couldn't see but felt in my bones. I stood up, pacing the room. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let it all simmer. When I heard her approach the door, I steeled myself. She knocked softly before opening it, her eyes red from crying. She stood in the doorway, her hands wringing together. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice hoarse. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear, it was never supposed to be like this." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. "I've been thinking," she continued, stepping into the room slowly. "Maybe we can try to fix this. Maybe we can work through it, like we always do." I looked at her, the weight of her words hanging in the air. How could she say that? How could she think I'd be willing to work through it after everything? I shook my head. "No, it's too late for that." Her face crumpled. "Please. I love you. I made a mistake. I'm sorry." I stood there, feeling numb. Her words felt hollow now. How could I believe anything she said? How could I believe she would choose me again after choosing him? "I'm not doing this," I said, my voice firm. It's over." The words hit her harder than I expected. She flinched, as if the finality of it all was too much to bear. But I couldn't take it back. I turned away from her, my heart heavy. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She had made her choice. And now, I was making mine. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one blending into the next. I kept telling myself it was the right choice to end it, but the silence was deafening. She stayed in the bedroom, mostly. When she did come out, it was just for meals or errands. We spoke, but only when we had to. Every conversation felt like a transaction, empty, mechanical. I couldn't escape the feeling of loss, not just for her, but for the life I thought we had. I told myself I was strong for making the decision, that I was doing what was necessary. But every time I saw her, every time I passed the empty spaces in our home that once held memories, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd given up too soon. I didn't reach out. I couldn't. I knew she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But the temptation to soften, to try to fix it, lingered. I questioned myself, but deep down, I knew I had to stick to my decision. On the fourth day, she approached me. Her footsteps were hesitant, and I heard her voice before I saw her. "I don't want this," she said quietly. "Please, just talk to me." I didn't turn to face her. I couldn't. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I love you. Please, give me a chance." Her words hit me, but they didn't move me. She had already shown me who she was. I stayed silent for a moment before speaking. "You've already made your choice," I said, my voice steady. "I don't think I can trust you anymore." Her face crumpled, and she stepped closer. "Please, I'll do anything." But I knew I was already gone. Emotionally, I was checked out. I had given her chances. Now it was over. I stood up slowly, finally facing her. "It's beyond fixing," I said firmly. She just stood there, her eyes full of regret, but I wasn't swayed. The truth was clear, it was over. The days dragged on, each one blending into the next like a monotonous blur. I stayed in the house, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It was just a space, a place that reminded me of the life I thought I had, now shattered. She kept her distance, but every time our paths crossed, there was this invisible tension, like the air was charged with unspoken words. Her attempts at reconciliation were subtle at first, small gestures, like making my favorite meal or trying to talk about trivial things, but they felt forced, like she was trying to patch up a hole that was too deep to fix. And then there were the moments when she would just look at me, her eyes filled with regret and guilt, as if silently pleading for me to give her another chance. It broke me every time, but I couldn't be swayed. I wasn't the one who needed to make amends. She was. A week passed, and I found myself sitting in the living room, flipping through old photo albums. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe some sign of the person I had fallen in love with, something to remind me of the good times. But all I found was a reminder of what we used to be. She came into the room quietly, standing in the doorway for a moment before speaking. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I know I've hurt you. I've ruined everything. I'm so sorry." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. There was nothing more to say. No amount of apology could undo what had been done. She stood there, waiting for a response, but I didn't give her one. I couldn't. The wound was too deep. "I'll leave," she said softly. "I'll give you space. I won't make this harder for you." It was the first time she'd said it, admitted that she was the one who had caused this. It stung, but I nodded. It wasn't about making it easier for either of us anymore. It was about moving on. She left the room then, and I was left alone with my thoughts. The divide between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was final, and as much as it hurt, I knew it was the only way forward. The days after she left the room, after that final moment, were quieter. She packed her things over the next few days, small piles of clothes, books, and the odd photo or memento we'd once shared. There was no drama, no arguments, just silence and the sound of her belongings being moved out, piece by piece. I couldn't bring myself to help. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I couldn't pretend to anymore. I stayed in the house, not sure where else to go. I wanted to leave too, but it was strange. This house, once filled with laughter and memories, now felt like a cage. I wasn't sure if I was avoiding the outside world or just too numb to face it. So I stayed. By the time everything was packed, she was ready to go. I hadn't spoken to her much in those final days. She'd asked, once or twice, if we could talk, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. It felt pointless. On the last night, she came to me in the living room, standing in the doorway like she had before, but this time there was no guilt in her eyes. There was just resignation. Her face was pale, tired. "I'm going," she said, her voice steady. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while. I'll figure things out." I nodded, unsure what to say. I didn't want to ask her to stay, even if a small part of me still hoped she would. I just couldn't do it anymore. She had already made her choice. She had to live with it. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, the words coming out more cold than I intended. She looked at me for a long time before speaking again. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't want to hurt you." "I know," I replied, though I wasn't sure if I did. The pain, the betrayal, it was still too raw. She stepped forward, slowly, and gave me one last kiss on the cheek, a brief, soft gesture that felt like an eternity. I didn't kiss her back. I couldn't. And with that, she left. The sound of the door closing behind her felt final, like the end of a chapter one couldn't rewrite. I stood there in the silence, looking around the empty room. The place that had once been our home now felt foreign. And for the first time in days, I finally let the weight of it hit me. She was gone, and so was everything that we had been. It wasn't until she was gone that the true weight of it all hit me. The house felt hollow, empty not just of her things, but of everything I had once believed in. It was like a constant hum of loneliness in the back of my mind, buzzing and never stopping. I tried to distract myself at first. I cleaned, rearranged, and spent hours sorting through things. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that this space, once so full of life and love, had been reduced to nothing more than a memory. It wasn't just the house. It was everywhere. It was the empty chair at the dinner table, the unmade bed that used to be so familiar. I even missed the sound of her voice, though I could never have admitted that to myself before. I realized how much I had taken her presence for granted, how much we had both relied on the routine of being together. But then, there were the moments I felt relief. I had made the right choice, I kept telling myself. I couldn't go back. Not after everything she had done. Still, there was that damn space between us that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just physical. Her absence was now an undeniable hole in my life. I kept wondering if I had done enough, if there had been some way to salvage what we had. But each time I revisited that thought, I knew deep down that it wasn't a question of whether I could have done something differently. It was about whether she was willing to choose me over him. And the answer to that was clear. She wasn't. One night, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring at the photos of us on the wall, pictures of better days. It wasn't the first time I had looked at them since she left, but tonight, they felt different. The memories were there, vivid and raw, and they hurt more than I expected. I leaned back, trying to calm the storm inside me, but I could feel my mind spiraling, unable to escape the endless loop of questions and regrets. How had it all gone so wrong? The sound of my phone ringing broke my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, and for a moment, my heart stopped. It was her. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the screen lighting up in my hands like some kind of omen. Her name flashed across the display, an unexpected connection to a past I was trying to sever. My thumb hovered over the screen, debating whether I should answer or let it go to voicemail. The old part of me, the part that had once loved her deeply, wanted to hear her voice again, wanted to believe that this call could somehow change things. But I knew better. I let it ring until it went silent, the empty buzz of the missed call echoing in the stillness of the room. For a few seconds, I just sat there, my mind racing with what-ifs. What could she possibly want now? Was she calling to apologize again? To beg for another chance? Was she trying to explain herself, to make me understand why she had done what she had? I couldn't bring myself to call her back. Not after everything. Not after how much she had hurt me. I knew that if I called her back, I'd open the door to something I wasn't ready for. Something that could pull me right back into the mess we'd left behind. But I couldn't stop thinking about the call. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to know if she regretted it, if she was truly sorry. The other part of me knew better. I knew that no words could change what had happened. No explanation could fix the cracks she had created in the foundation of everything we'd built together. I glanced at the phone again. There was a text notification now. "I'm sorry. Please call me when you can." My heart thudded, but I didn't respond right away. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the screen. Finally, I set the phone down on the table, the weight of the decision sinking in. There was nothing left to say. Days passed, and the phone stayed quiet. Her messages stopped coming. The texts, the calls, everything. It was almost like she had disappeared entirely, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. The silence was my ally, even if it was still a reminder of everything I was trying to move on from. I threw myself into work. The routine of office hours and deadlines gave me a semblance of control, something that felt solid after so many days of emotional chaos. I didn't have to think about her, or about the mess of our past. I didn't have to think about the things that could have been, the what-ifs that haunted me. But there were still those moments. When I'd come home, unlock the door, and for half a second, I'd forget. I'd expect her to be there, or hear the sound of her voice calling from the kitchen, asking how my day had gone. And then I'd remember. I'd remember the hurt, the betrayal, and that she was gone. The house felt emptier than before. I went through the motions of daily life, but something inside me was missing. The easy laughter we once shared, the connection, the intimacy that had somehow vanished over time, only to be replaced by the hollow space that remained. One evening, as I sat on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels, there was a knock at the door. I froze. My first instinct was to ignore it. Who could it be at this hour? Then I heard it again, faint, almost tentative. I stood up, heart racing as I approached the door. I opened it. fully expecting to find a neighbor or maybe someone selling something. But when I saw who was standing there, I froze. It was her. She stood there, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, her face tired, but there was something else there too, something urgent, desperate. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. The sight of her brought a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to slam the door and walk away. But part of me, the part that still remembered who she used to be, felt a pang of longing. I opened the door wider, stepping aside. I didn't know what she wanted, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. I stood there, holding the door slightly ajar, watching her. She wasn't the same person I'd known. She looked tired, worn down, like the last few days had taken a toll on her in ways I hadn't imagined. There was no arrogance in her stance, no bravado. She wasn't pleading. She was just there. "I didn't think you'd come back," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. It wasn't a judgment. It wasn't anger. It was just the truth. She nodded, her eyes falling to the floor before meeting mine again. "I had to," she said quietly. "I couldn't leave things like this. I need to explain." I stepped back, letting her in without saying a word. The house felt even emptier with her standing there. She moved slowly, like she wasn't sure what to do or where to go. She looked at the couch, the same couch we had spent so many nights on, talking, laughing, planning. I watched her, unsure of what was happening. "You don't have to explain anything," I said, my voice steady but tired. "You made your choice, and I've made mine." She flinched at my words, but I wasn't sorry. She'd taken her time in making her decision, and now I was doing the same. "I know I messed up," she whispered, "but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to take me back. I need you to know how sorry I am. I've thought about nothing else since I left. I was selfish. I hurt you, and I can't take that back." I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before, but I was still hurt. And there was something about her standing there, vulnerable, that made everything feel complicated. "I don't think you understand what this did to me," I said after a long silence. "It wasn't just about the affair. It was the lies, the way you chose him. I wasn't enough for you. You didn't think of me when you made that decision." Her face crumpled, and I could see the weight of regret in her eyes. I was lost. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't think about anything but what I wanted. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. There was so much I wanted to say, so much I needed to get off my chest. But I was tired. Tired of the games, tired of the pain. "I think you should go," I said, my voice softer now, but still firm. "I can't keep doing this." For a moment, she just stood there, her eyes pleading, but I wasn't swayed. I had made my choice, and it had nothing to do with her anymore. She nodded, her lips trembling as she turned toward the door. "I'm sorry, truly, for everything." And just like that, she was gone again. The door closed behind her, and the silence returned, heavier than before. I stood there, staring at the door for a long time. I didn't know what had just happened, but one thing was clear: it was over. For good. The days after she left were quieter, but in an unsettling way. The house felt emptier, yet there was a strange peace in the silence. I began to reclaim my space. Work, errands, the little things that once felt mundane. But they brought me a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I needed. I hadn't seen her since that night she came to apologize. I didn't want to. The desire to fix things, to go back to what we were, faded with each passing day. The more I spent time alone, the clearer I saw the cracks in what we had built. It wasn't love, it was convenience. It was time. And that realization was more painful than I could have imagined. Then, about a week later, a message popped up on my phone. A number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped as I opened it. "Hey, it's Greg. I know this might be weird, but I wanted to check in on you. How are you holding up?" I felt a surge of anger, followed by confusion. Greg, her affair. The man who had torn my life apart. Why was he reaching out? I hesitated. I should ignore it, pretend it didn't exist. But instead, I typed a response, my fingers trembling. "I'm fine. I don't know why you're reaching out, but it's too late for apologies." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. A few moments later, another message popped up. "I get it. I just wanted you to know I never meant to hurt you." I didn't know she was married when we started talking. I didn't know. I laughed bitterly. "It's not about you. It's about her. She made a choice." Another pause. Then, his response. "Yeah, I know." The simplicity of his words hit harder than any apology. It wasn't about him or his intentions. It was about her and the choice she'd made. And in that moment, I didn't need anything more. I stared at my phone, the weight of it all sinking in. There was nothing left to say. The phone call from Greg was the final piece of the puzzle. It was the moment I realized that I didn't need any more explanations, no more apologies, no more false promises. Everything had already been said, and nothing could undo the damage. She had made her choice, and now, so had I. I didn't call her back. I didn't try to fix anything. There was no more waiting for answers, no more hoping for closure. It was time to move on. I spent the next few days doing just that, sorting through my emotions, packing away memories, and trying to carve out a new life for myself. One that didn't involve her. One that didn't revolve around what we had, or what could have been. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, it got a little bit better. I started seeing things more clearly, from a place of strength rather than vulnerability. I spent time with friends, rediscovered hobbies I'd put on the back burner, and slowly, I felt myself healing. I wasn't happy yet, but I was starting to feel whole again. She reached out a couple of times after that. Texts, emails, even a letter. She begged for forgiveness, told me she was getting therapy, that she wanted to rebuild what we had. But I didn't respond. Each time, I felt the pull to answer, to give her another chance. But I couldn't. I had already made my decision. And I knew deep down, I was better off without her. The hardest part was realizing that our love story was over. It was hard to let go of the idea of us, the future I had imagined, the life I had dreamed of. But eventually, I came to understand that sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, it takes more than promises and apologies. It takes respect. It takes trust. And we had neither left. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, knowing that the best version of myself was waiting on the other side of the pain. It wouldn't be easy, but it was mine to reclaim.